All right, hi everyone. I hope y'all can hear me. My name is Jasper. I'm currently an engineering intern with MLH. Before MLH, I worked at a company called Hack Club, and the stream you're about to see is building communities around tech. So I have a couple of slides and some examples to talk about, but if people have questions as we go, they can feel free to put them in the chat, and I'll answer them as I go, or at the end, there'll also be an opportunity for questions. Alrighty. So as I just said, I'm Jasper, and this is Building Communities Around Tech. So a little bit about me. I'm really passionate about building super welcoming and innovative tech spaces for students specifically. I really like coding. I like mentoring people. I've organized a couple of events. Um, I most recently, I'm trying to think about the most recent hackathon. I organized a hackathon here in Vermont called Snowbound last winter. I helped with a couple of hackathons for Hack Club that we'll talk about soon. Yeah, I was formerly one of the community resources leads at Hack Club. So Hack Club, if you don't know, it's sort of like MLH but for teenagers. Um, and so I did like community moderation. I helped with events, and I also was part of their summer program called Arcade. All right, so you might be wondering why build communities in tech? And for me, it kind of divvies out into these four main bullet points. The first is foster learning and growth through collaboration. So really like creating these spaces where you can learn and grow and learn new technologies by watching other people. So a really great example of this is when I was working at Hack Club, we had this thing called HCB, which is a neobank that we wrote, and I had never learned Ruby on Rails. On HCB was written in Rails. And so I decided that one of the things I wanted to do is to start contributing as an open source contributor to HCB. And so I taught myself Rails, which ended up, MLH is a Rails house. And so I taught myself Rails, which is how I ended up in this position. So it all compounds. The second is creating spaces where everyone feels welcome. For me, this is things like MLH's Tech Together program for non-binary and other programmers who identify as female primarily. We had a similar thing at MLH called, let's see, I'm going to go say it was Days of Service. It's now called Athena. Yeah, but just a space where anyone and everybody feels welcome and can code. I think a lot of people, tech is a hard thing to break into. It's getting easier and easier. But just creating a space where everyone feels safe and like is welcome to learn, regardless of how much skill they have. I think like it's intimidating coming in with a lot of people who know a lot more, and so just that space that's like really welcoming that allows people to learn from any skill level. The third point is spark innovation by connecting diverse perspectives. So curating these places and these connections that allow people to meet people they wouldn't otherwise. I have a lot of really good friends that I met at a hackathon or online through some internet community. They're some of my really good friends, and I've created really cool projects and done really fun work with them. And none of these things would have happened if not for these internet communities. I think particularly one that jumps to mind recently that I had connected with this person online from this shared Slack server about a product that we both used. And when I was just in New York recently, I met up with them in person, and it was really cool to have already had that connection. And then the fourth thing is to support beginners, empower leaders, and make tech more accessible and fun. And that kind of is a lot of the things that I already talked about, but specifically just like how do we really give support to the beginners to like ask the dumb questions, or well, there's no stupid questions, but to ask the questions that some of the more advanced programmers might think is dumb or that they might think is kind of basic, but like how do we make the space more inclusive for them, and at the same time how do we empower the leaders and the really strong programmers to um, like teach those younger people, the more novice people, like how to do that and kind of get them involved. Yeah, so it's all interconnected. There's two types of spaces that I want to talk about. There's offline and then there's online. And offline, that's things like hackathons, in-person meetups, um, yeah, stuff like that, or physical spaces or venues. And then there's online, which is kind of more what I'm focusing on in this presentation, but which is like digital hackathons, Discord servers, Slacks, stuff like that. Um, and I think it's really important to think about both because the offline communities, the hackathons, the meetups, those are still really strong. And I think the two can really augment each other. Like you can't really have one without the other. Yeah, tech communities aren't just about code, they're about the people. And so let's look at what makes the community really great. In my mind, or that is the wrong slide. There we go. What makes it a great tech community? These are kind of the things that I just talked about in the last slide, so I apologize if I repeat myself. But I think the first one is inclusivity, so welcoming to all backgrounds and all skill levels. The two is active engagement, so regular events, discussions, collaboration, just stuff kind of going on and always happening. The third is accessible resources, so easy to find tools, guides, supports. Um, so like maybe it's a guide on how to like start learning Git or a programming language, just as like the accessible resources. And then a supportive culture, so kind of like the non-toxic environments for learning, encouragement, like mentorship, those types of things. And those things I'll talk about a little bit later, but especially the active engagement, you'll start to see as what I've been doing in the MLH server recently. So the first case study I want to look at is at Hack Club, because that was a little while ago, but something that I did, it's almost a year ago now. So Hack Club was a global community, a global community for high school students who love coding and building projects. They're primarily active online on a Slack server and in person through clubs and hackathons. And the thing that you'll learn quickly about the Slack, that we'll talk about a little bit later, is Slack is not designed the same way Discord is to be a community. It's more of an enterprise thing. And so that creates its own set of unique engineering problems when you're designing things around tech. And yeah, we'll talk about it a little bit later. Hack Club has a lot of open source tools. They have workshops, hands-on learning. They have this really great program for leaders. So any member can start a club at their high school, and they get all kinds of resources as part of that. I was actually one of the club leads. So I was one of the Hack Club HQ points of contact for clubs. So I got to meet Hack Club leaders and like onboard them, which was a super cool process. Yeah. So the first thing I wanted to talk about was clubs. And this is a map of every single Hack Club as of yesterday on a map that's active. So you can see it's a really good distribution. And kind of what I wanted to talk about clubs was just like the individuality of each club. So Hack Club as a whole is an organization, but what we really encouraged was people to create these individual, like small communities in their schools and help get people from their school involved and then bring them into the Hack Club community at large. And so a lot of the work that we did was like building, the stuff that I did was building these tools to help bring these people in and stuff like that. HCB, Hackle Bank was a really good example. Another one that we did, we had jams, which are these little workshops. And there were just really cool lessons or things that you could show your fellow club members that weren't too hard to learn and then weren't too hard to teach from there. Yeah, so that's clubs. The next thing I want to talk about is Hack Club Arcade. Hack Club Arcade happened right at the end of my time with Hack Club. And what it was for the entire summer, every hour you spent working on a project, so primarily coding, you earned an arcade ticket and you got to redeem that for prizes. And so a lot of work that I did around arcade was we had all these people coming into the Slack. And Slack is not designed to invite a whole bunch of people, especially when you're trying to filter out people who are over the age of 18, because Hack Club is primarily a community for teens. And so a lot of the logic that I wrote is building this custom flow for letting everyone enter the Slack. And like, so Hack Club, the arcade was a partnership with GitHub Education. So we sent out a newsletter to all of the GitHub Education folks about this program. So we had a lot of people trying to join. And so it was, how do we build fault tolerant systems? How do we work with Slack and like invite people to Slack? fun story about Slack. They have an API endpoint to invite people, but it's only available on an enterprise plan. And at that time, we weren't paying for an enterprise plan. We were grandfathered into their old nonprofit plan. And so we have this really janky code out there about where we web scraped to invite people to Slack. So we were hacking all these requests, and you'd remove like little chunks of this code that you wouldn't think would really matter in a request, but then it would suddenly like break everything. And so there's a lot of like weird jank around engineering on the Slack side. Yeah, and like building permissions and workflows isn't quite as easy as Slack as it is in Discord, just because of the nature of the way that it works. And so that led to a lot of really interesting challenges and things that we had to engineer. And a lot of people ask me, they're like, Jasper, I'm starting a community. Like, should I use Discord or should I use Slack? And I think it really depends on your use case. But I generally steer people towards Discord because I think it's a lot easier for the types of communities that a lot of people are trying to make. Yeah. And we talked about this a little bit before, but you really want to create a welcoming environment for people. And so what that looks like in my mind is like a really good initial onboarding, early integration, like getting people involved, getting people hooked and like continued to be involved through projects and initiatives, and then long-term belonging, like making people really feel like they're a part of the community. So the use case or the way that we did this in Hack Club was we had a team called the Welcome Team, and I ran the Welcome Team for a little while at Hack Club. And what the Welcome Team did was every single member that joined the Slack, we got a message, and we personally sent them a crafted DM. There were 10 of us on the team, and one of us reached out to every single person who entered the Slack. And while it was very time consuming, what it did was it created this really early initial relationship where then when everyone got through the onboarding flow and into the main server, they already felt like they knew someone, they had a connection or from someone or for someone that they could talk to and ask questions. We weren't all staff members. A lot of them were volunteer. And it just really created this like initial like friendship, which helped get people into the community. And then early integration, that's things like having an introductions channel. That's something that we just implemented for MLH. But like getting people to start like introducing themselves and reading other people's intros and like meeting other people, like-minded people. So stuff like that. And then continued engagement. The way that I think about that for Hack Club is we had you ship, we ship programs. So you ship some code or some sort of project, we ship you something in return. So like you build a PCB, we'll send you $100 to print your PCB, stuff like that. And those continued programs and like that, like those engaging activities, those help like keep people in the community and like keep them interested and engaged, which then leads to the long-term belonging. Branching out in the Slack, we had this concept of personal channels, so people could have their personal channels, which were like little zones or pockets where they could talk about like stuff they were working on that didn't really fit in another channel. And then anyone could create their own channel. We don't really have that in MLH right now. Something that I've been exploring. Yeah, but stuff like that fosters like the long-term belonging and people stick around for a while, which is super cool. And having like, I guess the step after that would be like an alumni community. I mean, MLH, you never really age out of that in a certain extent. But for Hack Club, like we have Hack Club alumni, which are people over 18 who participated in the Hack Club program. Yeah, so engineering community infrastructure. This can look like a lot of things in a lot of different ways. And like engineering is a very broad spectrum term. It's like a lot of the channel like creation and cleanup I just did in Discord and like things like that, Slack, like that could be seen as engineering. I see that as engineering. But what I think about here is like building tools and bots to help like support the engagement of people and also logistics. So there's two different categories. So the first, and some of them can fall into both. So supporting engagement, that's things like making sure like the welcome bot. So I built this bot called, it was Professor Bloom, and Professor Bloom specifically like helped welcome people. And that was more like a utility tool. But then we had this other bot called Toriel, and Toriel actually, like when you joined Hack Club, Toriel walks you through the welcome flow and accepting the code of conduct. And so I consider that more of like an engagement bot. And then there's logistics and engagement, and then there's the bot that we see the friendly avatar for over on the side here, Arcadius. Arcadius was the bot for the arcade program that I built with some friends at Hack Club. And that kind of fell into both. So it supported engagement because it walked people through the flow and it helped them, and it was a friendly character. But it also was a logistics tool for us because it was sending us the arcade hours to review and like signaling where people got stuck so we could make sure to unstick them. Um, and we talked a little bit about like how technical solutions can scale. Um, yeah, like it by creating some of these basic tools or some of these basic actions, it can really elevate the community. One of the things that's kind of like work in progress at for my role at MLH this summer is working on a kudos system. And so the concept of kudos, it might be called kudos, it might be called something else, but basically with kudos, you give points for when people like help with things. So let's say that my friend, they helped me fix a bug. Like I could give them a kudo for helping me fix the bug. Or like I, as an MLH staff, I saw someone being super helpful in a Discord. Like I might give that person a kudo. And a simple system of just like little like reward points can really help scale. Like suddenly you'll notice more people trying to help others and like all that stuff. And like at first, I think the incentive is not for the right reason. Like it will be for the kudos, but eventually, like the routine will be built about like getting kudos, and it won't necessarily be such geared towards getting them in the same way, and that will like help improve the community. Yeah, so really scaling community impact by building simple little technical things. Yeah, and so that sort of brings us to MLH. So for those of you who don't know, I am currently an engineering intern at MLH for the summer, and I'll be transitioning to be an event coach after that. But at MLH this summer, my goal is to improve community specifically around Discord. And so the way that that comes into play is in two main ways. The first is organizing events like AMAs to build excitement and provide value. We actually just had our first AMA in Discord the other day with Shy. It was super good. So AMAs, for people who aren't familiar, are Ask Me Anythings. And basically the goal with these in the MLH Discord was just to have like 1 hour sessions where people could come, they could hang out, they could meet someone cool from the MLH community or the community, like tech community in general, and ask them questions and get their advice. So the first one was with Shy, who is a developer advocate, and I moderated it. So we hung out for an hour last week and just kind of like asked questions and had a discussion. And then the second way that fostering engagement in online spaces comes through is using data and automation to personalize and improve community experiences. So you might have seen the recent change to Discord that everybody has to link their MyMLH account with Discord. MyMLH, for those of you who aren't familiar, is MLH's like authentication program. And MLH, we have data about things based on your MyMLH profile. So we know how many events you've been to. We know like if you've submitted projects at hackathons, if you've been a project winner at hackathons, stuff like that. And so we can use that data to really like steer your interactions in the Discord. So let's say you organized an event, you organized a hackathon with MLH, we'll know about that and we'll automatically add you to the organizers channel. Or let's say you were in the MLH top 50, we'll automatically give you a role or kudos for that. So just like tying the platforms closer together is the other thing I've kind of been working on. So the advice that I would give for anyone who's aspiring to build a community, as someone who's building several communities all at once right now, is start small, iterate, and listen to your members. So I think a lot of times, I have this as a character flaw myself, people tend to go overboard really early, like creating lots of channels and like creating all of these zones and roles and like really inflating it. And like really start super small. Start with just like one chat and like branch out from there as you see it's needed. Make small iterations and make lots of them rather than large, big iterations. And listen to the people in your community. If someone gives you a piece of feedback, then listen to that and like make changes. We had a community member like say, oh, like this channel, like I'd like to see this channel in a Discord, and we're like, yeah, that sounds really cool. Like let's add it. Stuff like that. And then the second point would be leverage technology to reduce friction and encourage participation. So anything you can code or build without going overboard to make it really frictionless and like a smooth experience for people in your community, build it. The welcoming bot, stuff like that, little automations. We're working. Discord has this concept of threaded channels or threaded messages. And one of the things we're seeing right now is that people aren't creating threads necessarily. And so I just wrote some code the other day that will automatically create threads for people. And so it's little things like that that will improve the quality of life for members, but not be a lot of engineering overhead and time. And then a third piece of advice is like leadership and empathy are really important, and adaptability. But I'll start with leadership and empathy, which because they kind of go hand in hand. Like, don't have an overinflated sense of self. Like, acknowledge like yes, you're like kind of running the community, you're a leader, or you're like helping build it. But like your members are just important. Like, no one has more or less importance than another. Like everybody has valid feelings and listen to them and acknowledge them all and like do your best to make sure everybody is happy and content. And adaptability, like the community might not be going the way you want it to, and that's okay. Like let it change, let it adapt. If you really want to steer it, you can. But I'd say like go with the flow, like see where it goes. You're probably gonna end up somewhere a lot cooler than where you were thinking. Wow, I went through that really fast. That is kind of the core of like the slides that I had for people. I don't know. Does anybody have any questions? Let's see. I can give some examples from the Discord. Let's look at. Trying to think of like a good. Yeah. Let's see. Does anybody have any questions? Let's talk a little bit more about Hack Club Arcade. Bear with me for just a minute, and I'm going to pull up some photos from Arcade. So I'm not around in the Slack, the Hack Club Slack as much anymore. So I don't specifically have like screenshots from any of those channels to share necessarily. But what I do have are some kind of behind the scenes from when we were working on Arcade. So there was a week where basically all that I did was I was actually sleeping at the Hack Club office for the week, which was kind of fun to work on this. So this is a photo of this little dashboard that we built to kind of like check on. So we had two bots. We had Hack Hour / Hackun and Arcadia, so we're kind of in sync doing things. And so we had a War Room dashboard, which was kind of cool. That showed the heartbeats for both of them, and we could see events coming in real time, and we're kind of monitoring the logs. We also built some really fun code where we had like a button, and if we needed to like force reboot the bots, we just like slap the button and it made a noise, which was kind of silly. Let's see what other cool. Yeah, and so we kind of I talked about like the iteration of how like iterating through these processes and building this stuff slowly and methodically. And so we actually did a lot of whiteboarding. So this was one of the flows that we built. And so you can kind of see the steps that we walked through, and we had like color coding. So it started and we we walked through all the steps super clearly, and we marked like where people could get stuck or specific things that needed to happen or alternate flows. Um, yeah, so it was a really good time, and we built like we had these checklists and like things that needed to happen. Yeah, so that's kind of like the behind the scenes from Arcade. Um, if anyone has any questions, they can drop them whenever. Let me see if I can find a good example of the stuff I'm doing at MLH right now. MLH. Okay. Let's see if this works. Percent. Okay, here we go. You guys can't see that yet. There we go. Okay, this is the, nope, there we go. Hold on. Let's fix the layout. Move add to stage. There we go. Okay, this is my MLH profile. And you can see the social media connection. I've got Discord. So I can actually remove this and I can show you what the flow looks like. So if we go over to Discord, here is the Discord. So we're gonna pop open my settings, authorized. Ooh, it's not gonna let me do this. Hold on just a second. I think I have to turn off streamer mode for it to let you do it. Okay, so we can see that my MLH is linked. So I'm just gonna deauthorize that and show you what it looks like to link my MLH. So if we go up here, we go into linked roles, you can see the linked role. Click my MLH verified. We open it up. It gives us a little prompt. We wait a small eternity for the Discord API to load. And there we go. So we can see it's linked in there. And then if I go back to here, you can see the linked role. And I have the MyMLH verified role. Yeah, and so the way that works under the hood is we do an OAuth grant from Discord. So we give it our credentials and it passes back some information about the user. And that allows us to do really cool things that we're just now starting to implement, but we haven't yet. So the base right now is that URL, that linked role then gives you permissions to talk in most of the server. We've gone through, there's been a lot of iteration about the right way to implement this and to walk through the flow, and it's kind of still a work in progress. I can actually show you. So the first thing I did when I started was to meet with a lot of people and like gather all these notes. And so I have these giant documents filled with different stuff that I was working on. Let's see, I'm just looking at if any of this stuff I can actually show you. Yeah, so we're building flows right now, specifically around like Global Hack Week. So when you check into an event, automatically getting the Global Hack Week role, stuff like that. And what that will allow is for really easy integration and like less necessity for user interaction. So rather than a reaction role for pronouns or for location, that stuff will automatically be added. And it will allow for things like location-based channels. So like, oh, you're in the Northwest, like we've got a channel for that, like meet people from that area. We're also playing around with like hackathon ride finder and stuff like that. So just more like fun, interactive community tooling. Yeah, that's. Does anyone have any questions about any of that? I'm going to leave it open for people for a minute to ask some questions if they have them. Look at that. I am on mute. Thank you, Jack. Um, if people have any questions, I'm going to hang out and answer questions, but people are welcome to drop off at this point. If they don't have questions, I can be reached several different ways. The primary way for you to reach me right now is to join the MLH Discord, which is discord.gg/MLH. And at me, I'm at Jasper from MLH there. You can also email me. My MLH email is jasper.mayon@mlh.io. Or if you don't want to email me about MLH things, my personal email is on the screen there. Yeah, so I will hang out for another 10-ish minutes if people have questions. But if people don't have questions, thank you so much for joining, and I hope you enjoy the rest of Global Hack Week. Thank you for coming, Jack.